and vibrant landscapes without worrying about your travel or missing a moment. Port hop along the Mediterranean with Celebrity or Holland America, or design your own bucket list adventure with Globus. Visit us online or call 866-GO-FOX-GO. Your European immersion awaits.
Find furniture for life from Ken Michaels Furniture in Brookfield, Greenfield, or downtown Milwaukee.
Trusted, relevant, locally owned, locally programmed. We are Wisconsin's radio station. News Radio 620, WTMJ Milwaukee.
At 9 o'clock, it's 40 degrees. Watching for a mess today. Rain and storms are likely. Some snow later. Breezy as well today with a high of 45. From the WTMJ Breaking News Center, I'm Adam Roberts. Russia demanding an end to military aid to Ukraine as a key condition for avoiding an escalation of the war. The demand made today after Russian leader Vladimir Putin spoke with President Trump on the phone Tuesday about a proposed 30-day ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. Trump and Putin also agreeing to a prisoner swap that will take place today. ABC's James Longman is in Kyiv.
Hours of conversation, Donald Trump did not convince Vladimir Putin to sign on to the US-backed ceasefire proposal, but the Russian leader did pledge to stop hitting Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Now, that is a significant move. Russia has caused havoc here on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, causing rolling blackouts, power outages, freezing conditions for millions.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky also says he will speak with President Trump later today. Meanwhile, a federal judge temporarily blocking the Trump administration's transgender military ban. Last month, the president signing an executive order banning transgender people from serving in the military. Now a judge barring Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth from implementing that order. Here at home in Madison,
there are 18 ayes, 14 noes, and the bill is concurred in.
That bill that would undo an overhaul of how Wisconsin measures academic achievement is now being sent to the desk of Governor Tony Evers. The bill would require the State Department of Public Instruction to overhaul state report cards to match how they measured academic achievement before changes were made in 2024. While it's unclear whether the governor will sign the legislation, he has criticized the process State Superintendent Dr. Jill Underly used to change those report cards. Time now for news about your money, the WTMJ Annex Wealth Management Market Update. Green for the big three. How about that to start the day today? The Dow up 225 points at 41,806. The Nasdaq's up 160 at 17,664. And the S&P 500 up 36 points this hour at 5,651. Financial planning at every level. Annex Comprehensive Wealth, Annex Private Client, Annex Ignite. Details at annexwealth.com. Sports, traffic, and weather next. Outdoor Living Unlimited, WTMJ News Time 9:02.
So if you're already in a relationship with an auto service center, that's great. We hope things keep firing on all cylinders.
But if you're not in a relationship, why not book your next date with us at Richlands the next time you're due for service?
All of our locations are AAA approved and staffed by ASC certified technicians with PhDs in
We can fix anything!
Put that on top of the friendliest, hardest working staff you'll ever meet inside a tire and service center,
and you've got yourself a rock-solid date.
the next time you're due for factory scheduled maintenance,
Or tires, brakes, and suspension service.
book your date at richlawns.com.
Or just Google us. But remember, Richlands is spelled with 2 N's.
And oh yeah, be safe, buckle up, and hey,
Always make sure you have good tread on your tires. I'm Courtney Matchkey with Richlands, and you're due for a date.
clever.
Richlands Tire and Service, such a refreshing change. Richlands.
At Erickson's Landscape Supply, we have durable, maintenance-free polywood patio furniture and #1 grade treated natural pine Amish-made patio furniture. And we also have a wonderful assortment of concrete benches, statues, and fountains available in a selection you just gotta see to believe. Erickson's Landscape Supply, high-quality mulch and stone for a whole lot less, plus a whole lot more. Commercial or residential, visit ericksonslandscapesupply.com to see our entire selection or stop on in today. He told us to load 4 yards into his 8-foot bed, but we knew that 3 full, honestly measured yards were going to fill his truck bed to the rim. After we proved that, he told us the other guys have been telling him he's been getting 4 yards in there for years. Honest measurements and honest folks who just want to do you right. So you come back. Erickson's Landscape Supply, high-quality mulch and stone for a whole lot less. Commercial or residential, visit ericksonslandscapesupply.com to see our entire selection.
Time for a WTMJ Sports Update from the Gruber Law Office's One Call, That's All Sports Desk. The Bucks fall to the Warriors 104-93. Milwaukee now dropping back-to-back games on this road trip, falling to 5th in the East, now at 38-30. Next up, a visit to L.A. to take on the Lakers tomorrow night. And the NCAA men's basketball tournament beginning for our Wisconsin teams tomorrow. The Badgers, the 3 seed in the East region, battling 14th seeded Montana, while Marquette is the 7 seed in the South and tips off against 10th seeded New Mexico Friday evening. Badger Sports Updates are sponsored by Siding Unlimited. It's siding and a whole lot more. And this college basketball tournament update is sponsored by Outdoor Living Unlimited. Let's check the roads now. Your WTMJ Johnson & Sons paving time saver traffic. No major incidents right now, just a couple of broken down vehicles. One on 94 West near the Moreland Road ramp, and then also 4145 North near County Line Road in Washington County. Little slow spot on 43 North from Center Street up to about Keefe. And that is it right now, though we will be watching conditions to deteriorate later today as weather moves in. Speaking of, here is your WTMJ forecast for today. Watching for rain and storms mixing over to snow later. Breezy, a high of 45. Snow tonight down to 29. Early snow Thursday and 41. Clouds increase Friday, 54. 38 cooler Saturday and a mixed Sunday and a high of 42. I'm Adam Roberts. Outdoor Living Unlimited. WTMJ News Time is 9:06.
Good morning, Wisconsin. So let's pour that coffee and talk to some experts about what's going on in Milwaukee, Madison, Washington, and beyond. Broadcasting live from the Annex Wealth Management Studios at the Avenue in beautiful downtown Milwaukee. It's the Political Power Hour on WTMJ. Here's your host, Steve Scaffidi.
Should we talk about the government?
Been looking forward to these interviews. In this hour on the Political Power Hour, we're going to talk to both candidates for the Supreme Court seats in Wisconsin Supreme Court. Joining us in the first half hour, I've known him for a while. He's the Waukesha County judge in this race. Former Attorney General for the state of Wisconsin, Brad Schimmel, joins us on WTMJ. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you, Steve.
So let's talk about this race. This is something, have you thought about doing this for a long time, or is this something that you just said, you know what, this is my time?
I'm pretty sure I told you 15 months ago when we talked, when I first got in this race, that this was the furthest thing from my mind. I had no plans to run for Wisconsin Supreme Court. It's something that came about because I watched what was happening on the court in 2023 and then the 2024 session. It continued on.
You mentioned that conversation quite a while ago. One of the recent things that came out of the MU Law School poll was a lot of voters still don't know the candidates, which surprises me, especially your candidacy. What do you make of that?
You know, the WMC sponsored poll came out a little later than that. It's got the undecided numbers much smaller. The Marquette poll, it had been in the field, I think, a good 2 weeks earlier. I don't know. The only poll that matters is the one that's on Election Day. And if there are undecided voters, it's both an opportunity and a challenge. You know, the opportunity is those are people we can reach and get our message about restoring objectivity of the court to them and hopefully persuade them. If the challenge is, of course, that you've got to find the way to get that there. And in this court, there is so much money, in this race, there's so much money coming into this that, boy, it's hard to get any clarity out there.
And we'll touch on that money aspect in just a minute. But I was curious, Judge Schimmel, you were with Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump Jr. in Oconomowoc earlier this week. And I was wondering, how does the campaign strategy for someone running for a judicial seat vary or compare and contrast to someone who's, say, running for a legislative seat or for governor?
Well, certainly people who are involved in political branches and politics can endorse judicial candidates. It's not a two-way street, though. Judges can't endorse them, can't get involved in partisan politics, but it is okay for them to support us, and it's certainly become more partisan. We both need a ground game, you know, to go out and do the work we need to get to voters. And it has kind of tended to be that Republicans go with the conservative candidate, the Democrats go with the liberal candidate. That's just become normal now. That doesn't have to mean that the court becomes more partisan. And that's frankly the whole reason I got in this race, is because the court has now been going through a political agenda. They've become more partisan. There have been times when there have been liberals in control of the court, times when conservatives are in control. And in the past, that didn't mean a political agenda. It meant generally still following the rule of law. You could differ on the outcome of an opinion, But you could find in there some basis that said this is the law, this is their reading of the law, and you could support that some way. I'm not seeing that now from this liberal majority on this court.
Judging by the ads that I've watched, and we'll get to the funding question as well, one of the biggest issues in this campaign is the backlog of these rape kits. Very controversial issue. I know you as Attorney General dealt with that issue. Tell me, in your mind, your experiences, what the issue was back then and how it's being depicted, fair, unfair. What do you think?
Oh, the public is being misled completely. It's frankly a lie the way they're telling this story. My opponent and her allies like to talk about numbers. Well, I'll talk about some numbers. For 25 years, no one did anything about this problem. These things accumulated on law enforcement storage room shelves and hospital storage room shelves, and no one did anything to deal with it. For 12 years, my opponent was in a position where she could have done something about it. She was a manager in Jim Doyle's Attorney General's office. She was his chief legal counsel when he was governor. 12 years. She didn't touch it. No one touched this. I got there. When I got there, 0 of these accumulated kits had been tested. And more importantly, no one had even inventoried them. We didn't know exactly what was out there. That was the first step, is we had to find out what was in this universe. We didn't know how many. We didn't know what the nature of those cases were, why those kits weren't submitted to the crime lab for testing. So 0 tested when I got there. A few years later, when I finished my time as Attorney General, there were 0 kits left to be tested. 4,200 approximately were tested. That was what we needed to do. We solved this problem.
Do you believe it was an organizational problem or an administrative problem or a funding problem from the Wisconsin State Legislature?
It is just simply a logistics problem. You can't take 6,000 kits and dump them on the crime lab. And now the 6,000 number is kind of misleading because that's the original inventory. Told us 6,000 were in the universe. There are only 4,200 that should be tested because the victims consented to having the evidence collected from their bodies tested. But the 4,200, we didn't know what was out there. We first had to find that. We did need to have funding for it. And you can't take that and dump it on the crime lab all at once. They can't handle that. They do their best to try to keep up with the daily influx of cases that come in. If these had been submitted to the crime lab over the years like they should have been, they would have been able to keep up. They might have made some adjustments, but we had to find funding to do it. We had to find labs that would do it. This was a nationwide movement, by the way. We weren't the only place in America doing this. We were one of the few places that did it on a statewide level. Cities did it, like Detroit did it. Detroit had always over 10,000 untested kits just in that city alone. So we were competing to try to get to private labs to test these as well. There's a suggestion that I should have just hired more people at the crime lab. Well, first off, I don't have that authority as Attorney General to just hire people. The legislature has to approve that funding. And the budget, when I got to the Department of Justice in 2015, was already done. That was already submitted to the governor to go through the legislature. I had the staff I was going to have. And it wouldn't make sense anyway. It takes a year to get a crime lab analyst for DNA work trained up and certified to actually do the work. It also takes 3 to 6 months to hire somebody under the civil service system. So we'd hire somebody. It would take a year and a half or a year later for them to get ready to do the work. And then we'd be laying them off when the work is done because the kits would be tested. It made no sense to do it that way.
Waukesha County Judge Brad Schimmel with us on WTMJ. Now, Schimmel, let's shift over to the funding in this race. It's arguably the thing on most people's minds when they think about this race in Wisconsin. It's going to set records for funding. We're nearing $60 million already, most of it not directly controlled by either you or your opponent. When you have independent expenditures, we could be close to that $100 million mark, according to Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. If elected to this seat, how do you remain beholden to the rule of law and not to the interest of those donating to your campaign?
The same way I do every day on the bench. It's actually refreshing, liberating to have a place where there is no politicking going on. It's even in our kids' cartoons. It's in sitcoms you watch. It's in everything. The nighttime talk shows, everything is political now. In my courtroom, there are no politics, and it's great that way. It's easy to do if you respect the oath you took. Judges take a different oath than most public officials because in our oath, we, of course, swear to defend and protect the Constitution, but we also swear that we will administer justice without regard to persons. Doesn't mean we don't care about people. What it means is we don't care who's sitting in front of us. It's the facts of the case that matter in the law. It doesn't matter whether you are someone who supported my opponent or someone who supported me. You get the same standard in my court. What are the facts of your case, and what does the law written by the legislature say about it?
If I can follow up on that, the numbers still are what the numbers are, and there's no disputing it. I know that some may say, is there a better way we can do this system of getting a justice on the Supreme Court? I know 31 states in the country have some sort of assisted appointment, whether the governor does it or the legislature helps out. How should we do it in Wisconsin? Should we change?
Well, that's a decision for someone else to make. But you look at the federal system, and in the federal system, judges they're nominated by the president at all levels, and then Senate approval has to occur. And yet, every time you see a decision from a federal court that someone has some criticism of, they always say who appointed that person. I think implicit in that, there is still a sense that there's politics involved. I think if we're going to have politics either way, I like a system that errs on the side of putting it to the voters to decide who's the best qualified to serve on the court. But again, that's a change that the legislature and the voters might like to make. That would be a constitutional change. That means passing 2 houses of the legislature and then going to a public referendum. I don't have a position on that. I mean, I'll see if I was seeking an appointment, I would put my qualifications and my motivations for running and my judicial philosophy on the line for that as the same as I'm doing it for the voters.
Big conversation in this race is obviously abortion. 1849 law in Wisconsin, the Dobbs decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. 1, do you support the Dobbs decision by the U.S. Supreme Court? And 2, how should Wisconsin move forward on this issue?
That's a decision of the United States Supreme Court. It's not for me to support or deny. It is the law of the land. It's for me to follow the law of the land. Now, they were interpreting the United States Constitution, searching for the word abortion anywhere in the Constitution and concluding, since it's not there and it's not a specific authority granted to the federal government, that puts it in the hands of the voters in the states. That's the law right now, and that decision should be made by voters. Everyone approaches any issue with your own personal history. I say this to jurors when we're choosing them. I tell them, listen, I don't have a Men in Black style pen where you click the clicker on it and it flashes and everybody loses their memory. You don't have that. So as jurors, you're going to have to assess, can you set aside your personal opinions, your personal history, and decide this case based on the facts in the courtroom? It's the same question any judge should be asking themselves before they hear a case. Can I be objective? I have a personal history with abortion. You may know from what I've talked about openly. My 2 daughters are adopted. 2 18-year-old young women gave us a family we can't have biologically. My daughters are in their 20s now. For 23 and 21 years, we have treasured those young women who gave us that opportunity. And because of our unique circumstances, we treasure life, even when it's not planned. But on the court, I don't make the law. I'm not running to make the law, and I don't want to. That law needs to be made by the voters of Wisconsin, and no 4 justices on the Wisconsin Supreme Court should decide that issue for them.
Early voting has begun across Wisconsin, running until the 30th. Yeah. We, of course, have been following closely here at WTMJ the situation in Madison with those 193 uncounted ballots in the November election. I spoke with interim clerk Michael Haas, who told me he is, quote, very confident we'll have an election people can trust and that is fair and accurate, while also admitting they had, quote, a hiccup in November. Judge Schimmel, do you have complete confidence in the integrity of this election, given the situation last November in Madison?
You know, as long as we follow the rules, it's possible that mistakes can happen. I don't know enough about the circumstances in the city of Madison to offer some judgment about what did or did not happen there. I don't know. But I do think that it's critical that voters from both sides of the aisle have confidence in the outcome of elections. To get that, we need to follow the rules. That's the responsibility of the legislature to write the voter integrity laws. The courts should make sure those laws are upheld and followed so that we all can, at the end of the election, believe in the results.
You were part of the Walker administration. You served as Attorney General. One of the big questions, of course, in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court is Act 10. What happens next to that sort of big change in the way we do things in the state of Wisconsin when it comes to funding? and other issues, union representation. Should, in your opinion, the Wisconsin Supreme Court hold off on any decision on that issue until a new court is seated in August?
Well, I don't know what they're going to do. It's going to be very tight to get to it now because their session ends beginning of summer. So if they'd have to have briefing get to them because right now it's still working its way through the Court of Appeals. I don't know what they're going to do. The court could bring it directly up. The issue is now. First off, I want to note something. That issue was decided before I was ever Attorney General. I was elected in 2014. I took the oath of office in January 2015. The Wisconsin Supreme Court and the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals had both found Act 10 to be constitutional before I ever took office. So we didn't end up being in a position where I had to defend it. There are two justices sitting on the current court who promised on the campaign trail that they would strike it down if they got elected to the court. Justice Dallett did it, and Justice Protasevich did it. My opponent was the lead attorney going after Act 10 when she was in the private sector before she became a judge. I have real questions for the voters. You need to decide, do you feel that with those justices who are apparently not going to refuse from that case, do you believe that Act 10 has any chance of a fair and objective review by this court? That's the question here. It's not about the outcome. It's about whether it's a fair process.
As we look back to that first question from earlier about the percentage from people from the Marquette Law Poll who said they don't know enough to form an opinion about you, and to be fair, also your opponent as well. What should voters know about Judge Brad Schimmel?
I've been a public servant for over 35 years. For 35 years, my only client has been the people of Wisconsin. As district attorney for 25 years in the Waukesha DA's office, I enforced the law the way it was written by someone else. I worked diligently for justice for crime victims. As attorney general, I enforced the law written by the legislature. I defended the law written by the legislature. In neither of those roles did I ever have any desire to make the law. And certainly in my last 6 years as a circuit court judge, I have had no desire to make the law. My promise, my commitment to the voters of Wisconsin is that I will restore objectivity, impartiality to the court, and I will have humility that gives me the respect for the proper roles of the other branches of government. That's my solemn commitment, and I'd be honored to have your listeners vote on April 1st.
Waukesha County Judge Brad Schimmel, former Attorney General for the state of Wisconsin, and candidates for Wisconsin Supreme Court. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you much, Steve and Adam.
You're listening to 620 WTMJ.
Don't count us out. Not
Lillard
yet.
scoops to the hoop, lays it in. The Bucks have taken a 1-point Lopez in transition, squeezes up a three, and he drilled it. The Bucks throwing fire.
This season is far from over.
Workman drives inside and stuffs it down with the right hand. 59 points now for Giannis. He's tapping his chest as he goes the other way, saying, "This is my house.
We are the home of the Bucks.
This is my house."
WTMJ.
We love being a trusted friend in the community for those who need an attorney but don't know where to turn. Our clients aren't the kind of people who typically bring lawsuits. Our clients have been hurt in a crash or accident and need our help and advice. I'm Jeff Zergabel of Pasternak and Zergabel. Frank Pasternak and I are injury lawyers living, working, and giving back in our community. When you need help from exceptional personal injury lawyers, go to Pasternak and Zergabel at injurywisconsin.com.
Lake Geneva is the Midwest's premier golf destination, featuring breathtaking views, crystal clear lakes, and rolling fairways. Treat yourself to an all-inclusive golf getaway with courses designed for all skill levels, luxurious lodging, distinctive dining, and a relaxing spa. Plan a Lake Geneva group golf outing, a corporate event, or a weekend getaway with friends or family. Their pros will help you plan a memorable golf experience. For info on courses and more, visit lakegeneva.com today. Lake Geneva, it's always been the place for legendary golf.
Hi, I'm Jim Token, president of the Auto Dealers of Metro Milwaukee. Did you know that Adam members employ more than 7,500 people? Plus, Adam recently completed their 14th annual Feeding America Change Your Oil promotion. To date, Adam has donated over $875,000, which provided over 2.6 million meals. Start your next car search by finding an Adam member dealer at adam.com. That's ADAMM.com.
Hey, this is WTMJ Steve Scaffidi for Annex Wealth Management. Annex Wealth Management is a clear choice when clear thinking and advice from a fee-only fiduciary is needed. If it's time for an investment retirement plan built by the fee-only fiduciaries at Annex Wealth Management, knowing where you are and where you can go is important. Annex will help you set actual goals. Head to annexwealth.com, click on the now famous Get Started button. Plus, Annex isn't going to push commission products at you. And Annex makes it convenient. They can handle every aspect: retirement, investment planning, tax planning, estate planning. One stop, 8 convenient locations for in-person meetings, or, I've done this too, virtual meetings using Zoom. Annex will meet you on your way to the retirement you desire. There is Annex Comprehensive Wealth, Annex Private Client, and Annex Ignite. There's a significant difference between financial advisors. Know the difference. Start at annexwealth.com.
It's like being trapped in a cage. And I know, that sounds dramatic, but your breathing triangle problem has got you trapped. And once you're freed, you're going to be able to live the life that you're missing out on. Now, this can simply mean experiencing the true pleasure of breathing freely. It will mean better sleep and more energy. And the worry of this problem any more affecting your life is going to be gone. Because in almost every case, when Advent has solved a breathing triangle problem, it's a one and done. Because we're not in the business of delivering Band-Aids. We want to fix your nasal breathing problem for good. We don't want you to be a lifelong patient. We want you to be our next success story.
Isn't it time you break free from that cage? Take the next step. Go to adventknows.com to schedule your appointment, because Advent knows when you breathe well, you live better.
Breathe well with simple solutions. AdventKnows.com.
Results may vary. Most insurance accepted.
It's Gina Della. You've heard me define what makes Pella Windows and Doors different. Let me introduce you to the woman behind the billboards, commercials, and share my extraordinary journey of resilience, reinvention, and shattering glass ceilings every Saturday morning at 6:30 on 620 WTMJ and anywhere you stream podcasts for What's the Difference with Gina Della to discuss business coaching across all industries, featuring successful executives, entrepreneurs, and mentors along the way. This is a story you won't want to miss.
The Upswing with Jeff Sherman.
Dr. Kimo Ayun, president of Marquette University. When you got that call, walk me through that and how it all happened.
So, Mike Lovell, when I met with him and I understood his vision, I walked out of that meeting, my very last meeting in the interview process, and called my wife and said, this suddenly got very real.
Weekdays from 10 to 11 on WTMJ. Presented by Horicon Bank, the natural choice for all your banking needs.
Just listen to our conversation with Judge Brad Schimmel, Waukesha County. Adam Roberts alongside. We talked about funding in this thing, and I was just looking during the break. Between now and 2030, we're going to have one of these every year.
Yeah, so if you think $100 million, like the Watchdog Group was suggesting for this race is high, give it a couple of years. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I remember we raised this on my Friday edition with Bill McCosh and Joseph Pecky, and I said, at some point, $200 million. There's nothing in these numbers, these incredible numbers, the most expensive in the country, and we can sort of have lots of conversation about why that is. Obviously, there's a lot of profile to this when you send people like Elon Musk and his money to our state, or George Soros on the other side. But these numbers are not going to go down. These cases, significant cases, when you're talking about abortion, certainly the Act 10 in Wisconsin, specific to Wisconsin, but other states have other issues. These races have become national races now, Adam.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring up with Judge Schimmel the idea of the appointment of a justice rather than an election. Like I mentioned, 31 states across the country do it in some capacity, and to Judge Schimmel's credit, he did respond like, well, the politics then shift from one area to another because, well, these donations are in the judicial race now. If the governor, say, appoints that race, well, that money's going to go somewhere else. So you're going to see the governor races start to shoot through the roof for money and donations there. Yeah,
you wonder at some point if states, legislatures, not just Wisconsin, will say, you know what, we have to do something, and then whether the federal government get involved. And obviously, Citizens United changed a lot of this stuff. But whether or not this is time to say, this is madness, we have to stop doing this. And whether Wisconsin would ever go to an appointment system, I don't think in any of these next years of races we'll see that.
Probably not.
Maybe in our distant future, who knows. Coming up in the second half hour of the Political Power Hour, we're going to be talking with Judge Susan Crawford from Dane County. Same questions, same issues, of course, two really strong candidates running. different ideologically, of course, one liberal, one conservative, and certainly backed up by significant numbers of donors. And you looked at that list that you shared it with me. It's a long list.
Yeah, especially those independent expenditures. I mean, it's 2 pages, and that could grow before we get to April 1st.
So Judge Susan Crawford will be our second of 2 candidates for the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. That's coming up in their second half hour. All this, by the way, available on our podcast page. If you missed any of the interview with Judge Brad Schimmel, or if you can't hang around, you're in your car going into the grocery store or something, we'll certainly have this up on our podcast page, WTMJ.com, at some point this afternoon. All of our shows, all of our interviews, always available. We have local news with Adam Roberts coming up. Before we get to any of that, here's now the latest from ABC News.
ABC News, I'm Sherry. Preston, continued bombardments against Gaza and continued protests against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. ABC's Matt Rivers explains from Tel Aviv.
When you add in these new airstrikes, which many people are not happy about because they say it's putting the remaining hostages that are still inside of Gaza in Hamas captivity at even greater risk. There's a lot of people who are very angry with Netanyahu who say that he should have come up with a deal to get those hostages home. Instead, he is reattacking Gaza, which would only add more uncertainty to the hostages' fates.
The case of Columbia grad student Mahmoud Khalil has now been transferred from Louisiana to New Jersey. Khalil was detained and threatened with deportation after organizing pro-Palestinian protests on campus last year. President Trump speaking today with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky following discussions on Tuesday between the president and Vladimir Putin, who agreed that Russian troops would stop bombarding Ukrainian infrastructure. This is ABC News.
Outdoor Living Unlimited WTMJ News Time is 9:31. I'm Adam Roberts. The group aiming to preserve the Mitchell Park Domes is rebranding itself from Friends of the Domes to the Milwaukee Dome Alliance. This comes a few months after the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors unanimously approved the Dome's reimagined plan, pledging up to $30 million in public funding for what could be a $134 million Dome's renovation project. The domes have existed for several decades and are experiencing years of deferred maintenance as well as crumbling infrastructure. The Oak Creek Common Council voting to rezone land around I-94 and Elm Road for a proposed Buc-ee's travel station, despite comments from many residents who are voicing concerns about increased traffic as well as light pollution. Some neighbors also threatening potential legal action on the plan. The Oak Creek Buc-ee's still slated to open sometime in 2027. And 4 final candidates to lead the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee have been named. They're Thomas Gibson of UW-Stevens Point, Carol Kim of the University at Albany in New York, Alan Klotche from UW-Milwaukee, and Nicole Parsons-Pollard from Georgia State University. One of the 4 will replace outgoing Chancellor Mark Money, who's going back to teaching starting in July. Time now for news about your money. The WTMJ Annex Wealth Management Market Update. All still in the green for the big 3. The Dow up 252 points at 41,834. The Nasdaq's up 172 at 17,676. And the S&P 500 is up 42 points this hour at 5,656. Financial planning at every level. Annex Comprehensive Wealth. Annex Private Client. Annex Ignite. Details at annexwealth.com. Let's check the roads now. Your WTMJ Johnson & Sons paving time saver traffic. Got a little bit of lane debris out on 894 South near Greenfield. Looks like it's right between the far right lane and those 2 lanes as you exit onto, I believe that's Lincoln. So just be mindful of that if you're heading south. Could be a little bit of scattered lane debris. Doesn't look to be a whole lot. We do have some slowdowns the other way, though, on 894 heading north out of the Hale to about Beloit Road. Just be mindful of that. You'll be tapping the brakes there. Elsewhere, we're looking pretty good across the system. No other major incidents or delays. And your WTMJ forecast, watching for a wintry mess later today. Rain and some thunderstorms likely. Some especially closer to the Wisconsin-Illinois border could be on the strong side. That rain transitions to snow later this evening. A high of 45 today. Breezy tonight, up to 2 inches of snow possible, a low down to 29. Early snow chances then Thursday and 41, 54 and clouds Friday, partly cloudy 38 Saturday and 42 Sunday with a rain-snow mix. Right now in Milwaukee, cloudy skies and 40 degrees. I'm Adam Roberts, Outdoor Living Unlimited, WTMJ News Time 9:34.
It's time for you and that diamond to come alive again.
at the 4th Annual Spring Ring Cleaning at Kessler's.
Even if you have a good ultrasonic jewelry cleaner, it can't match the pressurized steam cleaning we do at Kessler's.
Let us steam clean and polish your engagement ring.
For free.
I'm Joe Gerke, president of Kessler's, and we want to strip away all the soap scum that is making your diamond look dull.
For free. And while we're doing it, we'll inspect the prongs on your ring to make sure your diamond isn't about to fall out.
It's the 4th Annual Spring Ring Cleaning at Kessler's.
Here's another idea. Bring us anything you own that needs to be repaired, and we'll give you a price to make it like new again.
And if you have some old jewelry you don't wear anymore,
We can make something unique and wonderful out of it.
unique in all the world.
Welcome to Kessler's.
To find the Kessler's nearest you, visit Kessler'sDiamonds.com.
Hi, folks. This is Hank Albert, owner of BBC Lighting. At BBC, we sell all the top brands of lights and ceiling fans, such as Visual Comfort, Tech, Schoenbeck Crystal, and hundreds more. We get every brand, and our prices are the lowest. I guarantee it. In our award-winning showroom, you'll also find factory closeouts with lights and fans priced well below their original cost. If it's lampshades or repairs you need, we do all that too. There's something for everyone at BBC, including fun for the kids and our famous free popcorn. We're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, Saturday, 10 to 4, and located at 20th and St. Paul Avenue, across from Sobelman's, near the Potawatomi Casino. Stay safe and healthy, my friends.
Welcome back to Political Power Hour. In our hour-long conversation with the two candidates for the Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice seat, joining us this half hour, she's a judge, in Dane County. Susan Crawford joining us. Adam Roberts alongside as well. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
All right. I want to start with one that it sort of surprised me when I saw the MU Law School poll that suggested both candidates' numbers were pretty big, but yours was really big. People who didn't know a lot about Susan Crawford, Judge Susan Crawford. What do you make of that?
Well, this is a spring election, and we don't expect turnout to be as high as it was last fall. And it just means that my campaign and certainly I as a candidate need to work harder to make sure that voters understand the stakes of this race and that they know about me and can have confidence in voting for me as a justice.
What should they know?
Well, I think that they should know that I have pledged to be a fair, impartial justice on the Supreme Court. Accordingly, I have not prejudged any cases or taken any positions on any of the issues that may likely end up before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That is not something that's appropriate for judges to do. That is in contrast to my opponent, who has done that repeatedly throughout the race. I also have pledged to be nonpartisan and independent. That's part of impartiality. And likewise, the contrast with my opponent is a really sharp one in that he is saying things like he wants to be part of Donald Trump's support network on the court. So those are really important differentiations between me and Brad Schimmel. But I also want them to know that I have a long history of working first as a prosecutor. I've also worked in the courts to protect the rights of Wisconsinites as a private practice lawyer. I've argued both civil and criminal cases in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and I've now been on the bench for about 6.5 years, handling all kinds of different cases as a judge, and I believe that I have exceptional qualifications and the strongest qualifications for this seat.
If I can ask Judge Crawford, it's been a very busy campaign season already for both you and your opponent. A lot of events in our area of the state, southeast Wisconsin. What have you been hearing from voters outside of our 9-county southeast Wisconsin sphere as far as this race, whether it's funding, whether it's any of the issues? What have you been hearing from outside of our local sphere in southeast Wisconsin?
Yeah, well, voters have a lot of different concerns about the Supreme Court and about this race. It really just depends on their particular perspectives. Sometimes I've had a lot of voters approach me and share really personal stories about women's reproductive health care rights. And that's an issue that a lot of people are deeply concerned about in this race, and they should be. You know, Brad Schimmel has taken position saying that he believes the 1849 abortion law, which is now before the Supreme Court, has nothing wrong with it. He believes that law should be enforced. He's also said that there's no constitutional right to allow women to make their own healthcare choices during their pregnancies, and that's another issue before the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So that certainly is one of the top issues that I hear about. But people are also concerned with things like fair elections and being able to exercise their right to vote. As you know, the Supreme Court often has cases in front of it that deal with, election and voting law and things like that. But, really depends on the voter. And I think mainly voters are just really concerned that the Supreme Court not become politicized and not be pushing a partisan agenda, as my opponent seems to want to do.
If I can jump in on that point of election integrity, you're from the Dane County area, you've been for a long time. You're probably very familiar with what's happened in Madison last fall regarding those 193 uncounted ballots. I spoke with the city's interim city clerk in Madison and earlier this month. He seems very confident about the integrity of the election, though he did admit there was a hiccup in the city in November. Do you have that same confidence that this election will be 100%, will have 100% integrity?
Yeah, I am confident that the city has taken that mistake very, very seriously. And I know the city attorney who has stepped in to serve that role, and he is somebody with a lot of experience, Michael Haas, in election administration. So I feel that things are in good hands with him at the helm, at least through this election cycle.
If you watch any television show or series or programs, you see the ads for this campaign. It's now going to be the richest campaign in U.S. history, $100 million they're talking about. When you look at the way we fund campaigns, now, although that's separate, most of this funding, you're not directly responsible for it, nor is it controlled by the candidates. Are elections for Wisconsin Supreme Court, or really any Supreme Court elections for states, should they be elections, or should we do it in a different way?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and there's a lot of arguments for and against judicial elections. But one of the things I tell people is look at the U.S. Supreme Court to see what an appointment process gets us. And public confidence in the U.S. Supreme Court right now is, I think, at an all-time low. Those are folks who were all appointed, and that's really the only alternative to elections. So in my view, elections are a much more democratic way to determine who the justices are who serve on our Supreme Court, and my preference would be to put it to the voters.
Now, Judge Crawford, to the point of funding, this is, of course, on target, if not already, to be the most expensive judicial race, not just in our state's history, but in the country. And the question many people want to know is that their judges are beholden to law and order, not necessarily to those benefiting their campaign. How do you, if you're elected to this position, promise to stay beholden to the law and order and not to the interest of your donors?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. I think that is really a critical one in this race. And I have consistently throughout my campaign, and I'm the only candidate who can honestly say this, I have never promised anyone anything. So I haven't said, I will decide this particular case in this way, and that's why you should support me. What I've said is that I will apply the law fairly and impartially, and I'll interpret the laws and Constitution in Wisconsin as they were intended. I believe the laws are intended to protect our citizens. That's why we have laws. And I've told anyone who is interested in my race that I welcome their support, but they have to know that they're supporting a fair, impartial judge, not a way to, there's no quid pro quo. There's nothing that I'm going to promise them in exchange for that support. And again, if you look at what my opponent has done, saying that he wants to get on the court to be part of a support network for Donald Trump, he has welcomed the support of Elon Musk, who has now poured over $11 million into this race. Absolutely unprecedented in any election of any form in Wisconsin to get that kind of support from a single person. Of course, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, so I think it's probably pocket change for him. But Musk has paid canvassers going around the state distributing leaflets that say, put Brad Schimmel on the court to support the Trump agenda. Just an extremely partisan message. Our Supreme Court should not be politicized in that fashion. So I think, again, there's a big contrast between how I'm running my race and the support that I've gotten compared to my opponents.
Judge Susan Crawford joining us on a special Supreme Court edition of the Political Power Hour on 620 WTMJ. Judge Crawford, do you think you're an underdog in this race?
Well, I think I've run by far the stronger campaign in this race. I have an excellent campaign team, and I think we're going to win this one. And if you look at the way my opponent has run, trying to politicize the Supreme Court and even trying to politicize the Constitution, I really have a lot of confidence in the voters of this state that they will understand that that's not the right way to go with the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and will make sure that they put the not just the better qualified candidate, but really the only candidate who wants to do the job as it was intended, which is to apply and interpret the law fairly and impartially.
Judge Crawford, one issue that has been hot on the minds of many people in this election is Act 10, and more specifically, its future. You, of course, represented teachers who challenged a provision of that law while your opponent was Attorney General under the then Walker administration. We asked Judge Schimmel this question. I'll ask you the same one. Should the state Supreme Court hold off on deciding that issue until August when a new court would be seated?
Well, the Supreme Court recently had an opportunity to take the case up. There was a petition before them asking them to take it up directly rather than to have the case go through the Wisconsin Court of Appeals, which is kind of the normal path for cases to take. And so at this point, I think it is highly unlikely that the Supreme Court will take it up before the new term starts in August. Just from a practical standpoint, I'm very, very familiar with the rules and procedures of the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and it would be near impossible for the Supreme Court to actually make a decision in that case before this current term ends. So, just in light of the way that the court operates and takes up cases, I don't believe it's going to happen that way.
I did want to follow up on that. During the debate earlier this month, you did mention to the moderators you would most likely recuse yourself in the same provision that you were previously involved. Does that remain the case?
Yes, I think what I said is, look, Act 10 is a 50-page long act that changed a whole variety of different provisions in the Wisconsin statutes. I believe that the case that is working its way through the courts, although, caveat that I have not examined the legal filings in that case, but as it's been presented in the newspapers, it appears to me that it deals with a different provision than the ones we were challenging back in 2011 or 2012. So if there were a challenge to the same provisions we were looking at back then and the same type of legal challenge to those provisions, I would take a close look at recusing in that case. I hesitate to make an absolute guarantee in any case on how I would rule on a recusal request because in my mind that is prejudging or pre-deciding an issue that I should as a judge not do until I have the facts in front of me, know who the parties are, know exactly what the legal issue is before the court and what's being challenged. But, we saw Justice Hagedorn make a decision to recuse for a couple of reasons in that Act 10 case. One is that he was involved in drafting that law, and secondly, that he had previously defended a lawsuit that challenged the exact same provision that is now being challenged in the current lawsuit that's working its way through the courts. So, I think that was, I read his order that contained his analysis on that issue, and I think it was appropriate and a good call by him.
We only got a couple of minutes left. We're talking to Judge Susan Crawford, candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court. Obviously, abortion, women's rights, big issues across this country. Two questions. One, did the U.S. Supreme Court, did you disagree with their decision on the Dobbs case? And how should Wisconsin move forward on this issue, specifically in the Wisconsin Supreme Court?
Yeah, well, I can certainly address my thoughts about the Dobbs decision because that's a decision that has happened, and I disagree with it strenuously. I think it is the first time ever that the United States Supreme Court has thrown out a precedent that, and a nearly 50-year-old precedent with Roe versus Wade, that recognized constitutional rights that it has now retracted. And as a result, my own daughter, who's 24 years old, doesn't have the same rights that I had as a 24-year-old under the Constitution. And I just think that's flat out wrong. And not only that, but it is the decision itself really pulls out the underpinnings of a whole line of cases that deal with really personal decisions that people have been able to rely on to make and know that their rights were protected, involving things like who you marry, whether you can access birth control, and other, just really personal decisions that I think people feel like they ought to be able to make for themselves without their government getting involved. And with respect to the second part of your question, Steve, what should the Supreme Court do with this issue? As I said, I won't signal how I might decide any particular case or issue. And there are two cases in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court right now, one of which is reviewing that 1849 law on the books that would criminalize just about all abortions in Wisconsin. The other being a case that asks the court to recognize the constitutional right to make these kind of deeply private decisions under the Wisconsin Constitution. And what I can say, although I'm not going to say how I would decide any of those issues, is that I believe that the Wisconsin Supreme Court should closely scrutinize any claim that involves an argument that the government is intruding in or taking away some of those fundamental personal decisions about how we live our lives. I think the court should carefully scrutinize issues like that and make sure that the constitutional rights of citizens are protected.
Judge Susan Crawford, thanks so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much, Steve and Adam. It was a pleasure.
You're listening, of course, to 620 WTMJ.
Hi, this is Julie Coombs and Cindy Storm Fisher with Storm Fisher Investment Group. Are you a retiring professional worried about the direction of our economy, about making your money last? Come see what we can do for you. Let us show you how we take care of you to help you have a great retirement. We are at 262-796-8400 or stormfisher.com. See you soon.
Securities offered through Osaic Wealth Inc. Member FINRA SIPC. Advisory services offered through Osaic Advisory Services LLC. Osaic Advisory. Osaic Wealth and Osaic Advisory are separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, and services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth and Osaic Advisory.
Hey, this is WTMJ Steve Scaffidi for Milwaukee Weight Loss. I have lost 35 pounds. Hopefully you can see that on the live stream. It's the secret to losing a pound of fat almost every day. The doctors develop easy-to-follow weight loss program. You lose weight fast, naturally, safely. You don't have any drugs, injections, no risk of serious side effects, no prepackaged meals, bars, shakes, all of that. Their program resets your metabolism. You can keep the weight off for good. Ongoing coach support. I go there every 2 weeks. You can go up to as much as every week. And the program, get this, costs up to half as much and works up to twice as fast as most other programs. How do you find out about it? Schedule your free consultation by calling 262-449-1180 or go online at MilwaukeeWeightLoss.com. That's MilwaukeeWeightLoss.com. Results may vary.
Lake Geneva is the Midwest's premier golf destination, featuring breathtaking views, crystal clear lakes, and rolling fairways. Treat yourself to an all-inclusive golf getaway with courses designed for all skill levels, luxurious lodging, distinctive dining, and a relaxing spa. Plan a Lake Geneva group golf outing, a corporate event, or a weekend getaway with friends or family. Their pros will help you plan a memorable golf experience. For info on courses and more, visit lakegeneva.com today. Lake Geneva, it's always been the place for legendary golf.
Hey, it's Jason Wilde for Excel Custom Decks. I at least like to think I'm an expert when it comes to football, but I know Excel are truly experts when it comes to the art of deck building. With the finest materials and products combined with their superior craftsmanship, they'll deliver exceptional quality and value on everything from backyard decks to pergolas and outdoor kitchens. If you can dream it, Rob and his family can build it. Family-owned Excel Custom Decks delivers decking excellence by design. Visit excelcustomdecks.com to learn more.
You can't beat Burkhart.
Sports lovers love us.
Vince Vitrano for Connect Chiropractic. Winter shoveling, hibernating, being a couch potato, Chiropractic can help bring back your energy. Headaches, neck pain, back pain, shoulder pain. How quickly you can see results will vary from person to person, but time and repetition is key to staying on the right track. No twisting, no cracking, no popping. At Connect Chiropractic, they use an instrument called the Integrator that allows them to be gentle and specific with all their adjustments. New location coming soon to Oak Creek. Get started at goconnectchiro.com.
We love being a trusted friend in the community for those who need an attorney but don't know where to turn. Our clients aren't the kind of people who typically bring lawsuits. Our clients have been hurt in a crash or accident and need our help and advice. I'm Frank Pasternak of Pasternak & Zergabel. Jeff Zergabel and I are injury attorneys living, working, and giving back in our community. When you need help from exceptional personal injury lawyers, go to Pasternak & Zergabel at injurywisconsin.com.
Hey, it's WTMJ Steve Scaffidi for Advent. Snoring, tossing and turning, restless nights of sleep does not have to be your reality. It's not mine any longer because I went to Advent. My nose wasn't working properly. 30-minute visit. One of their great facilities. Talked to the docs. We added in a really simple sleep study at home. They found out my problem, sinuses, nasal passages. Very common problem. Now, everyone's different problems, different solutions. For me, after a short procedure, back to breathing better than ever. My wife, Kathy, and I sleeping through the whole night. If you struggle like I used to, take the time to see how Advent can help you. To find out breathing well and sleeping well can make your nights better, go to adventknows.com and schedule an appointment today because Advent knows when you breathe well, you live better.
Since 1964, we've changed your tires and so much more. Richland's Tire and Service, such a refreshing change. Richland's.
Visit family-owned Ken Michaels Furniture and our in-store design centers where you'll still find beautiful, luxurious, heirloom-quality American-made furniture. Right now, save 30 to 35% store-wide and take advantage of our complimentary design services. Whether you're moving, renovating, or updating, our designers will help your vision become a reality. Visit Ken Michaels Furniture in Brookfield on Capitol Drive and in Greenfield on Highway 100 to save 30 to 35% store-wide today. Sleep better and save more with mattresses from Milwaukee Mattress and Ken Michaels Furniture. Handcrafted in our Milwaukee factory, our mattresses utilize natural materials like cotton cushioning, which dissipates body heat, Joma wool quilts for warm wintry nights and cool summer evenings, and natural latex providing superior conformability and pressure relief for aching joints. Stop in today at any Ken Michaels Furniture store and save up to 50% compared to national brands.
WTMJ, W277CV, and WKTI HD2 Milwaukee from the Annex Wealth Management Studios. This is News Radio WTMJ, a Good Karma brand station.
I did it. Oh, we certainly did. Special Supreme Court candidates interview segments of our show today. And thanks to Adam Roberts from the newsroom for asking questions and being part of that.
Glad to do it, Steve.
Absolutely. And we'll have lots more to say about this race in the next 2 weeks as we look forward to the first Tuesday in April. The news is next, right here on 620 WTMJ.
Hi, I'm Tony Drake from Drake & Associates. If you save for